Greetings from the cosmic horrors. The stars are right once again, and the great old ones are allowing us to talk about for 30 plus minutes H.P. Lovecraft, the horror writer is a genre unto himself. I am your cosmic host, Mark Griffin, executive of the Lovecraft estate on Yaga, joined in by two from Material World, David Guffey, a professor at Miss Patonic University, and Richard Wilson, who is looking around for 7 club sandwiches. Hello, Mr. Faig. Today's our guest, Kenneth Faig. You've been around for a while, haven't you? It's like your third
Yeah,
appearance.
I turned 76 this month, or
70s.
in August. So I've been around for a while, I guess.
Yeah. I believe this is your third appearance on our show.
It is. I did one on Edith Minotaur, and then I did one on Lovecraft's ancestors and relatives.
Yeah, my time.
So now I'm back for another topic.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the author John Osborne Austin and whether Lovecraft read his 7 clubs tales. And it's always good to have you on. And so, guess my first question is: there's no record that H.P. Lovecraft ever read any John Osborne Austin, but he did own his works of fiction.
That's true. I think he inherited three books from his uncle, Dr. Clark. He inherited the journal of William Jeffrey, which is it contains the first 7 of the 7 club tales, and then he had a copy as well of more 7 club tales, which has the next 7, and then he also had a copy of another novel, Philip and Philippa. So he had 3 books of Austin's fiction that we know of, but as you commented, we don't really have any evidence that he read them. The only mention of Austin in Lovecraft's letters is a reference to using his genealogical dictionary of Rhode Island when he and Wilfred Tallman were doing research at the Rhode Island Historical Society. So it's all a matter of speculation, but I think there are elements in the 7 club tales that would definitely have appealed to him had he read them. Particularly, many of them have an element of the supernatural, and also, at least of the second set, quite a few are set in Rhode Island. So those 2 elements would certainly have appealed to him.
It does seem like that'd be a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup for H.P. Lovecraft.
Yes.
How did you first learn of the Journal of William Jeffrey, gentlemen?
I really do not recall, to be frank with you. That's the best straight answer I can give you. I don't know for sure, but I became interested in Austin, and I went on from there. I wrote an article on him for the 2020 Lovecraft Annual, number 14. It's the one with the green covers, and as part of that, I read as much of his fiction as I could, and basically all of his fiction is available on the internet today. So you can read electronic versions of the books. So, some of them have also been reprinted in hard copy format. So I don't recall the first point origin, but I have been interested in Austin for a number of years. For one thing, I also am a genealogist. Nothing like Austin was, but this also made me interested in him. I probably knew of his genealogical work before I knew of his connection with Lovecraft.
I get a feeling that one of the stories that he wrote, Philip and Philippa, the romance would have been to his liking, Lovecraft's liking.
I don't think so. It's about 2 eighth or ninth cousins who are chasing each other around the globe, and finally it has a happy ending. But it's more or less just standard romance type fiction of the type that Lovecraft did not like. He complained about that kind of story in what was it, Argosy All Story, Fred Jackson's fiction. So Austin wrote quite a number of them. There's another called A Week's Wooing and Dolphin Dolly. And then there's one that's a trilogy of novelettes that he published toward the very end of his life. But I don't really think that any of those would have appealed much to Lovecraft. I have to admit, I had to kind of push myself to finish reading them.
I guess the Seven Club Tales would be more to his liking.
I think so. For the two factors, essentially, the fact that there's a strong Rhode Island connection, and also many of the tales have supernatural elements. So I think those two features would have appealed to him.
So William Jeffrey, he was a real person, wasn't he?
That's correct. He was from Sussex, born there in 1591. Came to the New World along about, I think, 1640 or thereabouts. He married a woman named Mary Gould, and he was a resident of Newport. Died in 1675, I believe. So all of the tale tellers, all 14 tale tellers in the two Seven Club books are real people. In fact, I'm not sure I could identify for you any character in those stories who is not historical, other than, of course, the fictional characters in the stories themselves. But in the journal itself, in the first book, the Journal of William Jeffrey, the Seven Club Tales are embedded inside that book. It's a longer book. It purports to be his diary from his early life in England until just the day before his death. But in the framing journal, I'm not aware of any fictional person. In doing his genealogical dictionary of Rhode Island, Austin just must have read an incredible number of early Rhode Island wills and consulted other sources. So he had a very rich background to draw on in framing these seven gentlemen who were telling the stories. So each and every one of them is a real person. And when you add the second seven tales, one of the tellers was a lady, and she was also a real person. So all the tale tellers are real persons.
Okay, just making this clear. William Jeffrey was a real person, but the journal was an utter fabrication.
Yes, that's right. In fact, Austin even admitted so much in the subtitle. The title of the book is The Journal of William Jeffrey, Gentleman, but one of the subtitles is A Diary That Might Have Been. So that's an admission right off the fact that the diary, in fact, the whole work, the Seven Club Tales and the framing diary, is all fiction.
So did he base it on any factual events?
Well, certainly the diary itself, let's set aside the Seven Club Tales for a moment, but the diary itself reflects many, many historical events. The hanging of Mary Dyer, the Quaker persecution, and the hanging of Mary Dyer in Boston in 1660, developments in Rhode Island itself. Some of, now he also, some elements of the diary concern weather and crops and such, and to what extent Austin actually had clues. Was the year 1663 actually a good year for the wild berries on the island? Well, I don't know. I don't know that he might. It's possible there are some actual Rhode Island diaries, etc., that might give some clues in that regard. But generally, he was reflecting real events in the framing diary. Some of it may be fictionalized.
And so, did the public accept the journal as being factual, or were they in the joke?
Well, I think that the subtitle more or less gave them a very strong clue that it was a work of fiction, and I think the fact that it was the book was originally published in 1899, and as early as the very next year, Austin brought out the more Seven Club tales. So that shows that there was probably some public interest in the tales, especially. So whether there were any members of the public who kind of just ignored the subtitle and assumed it was all true, I can't really tell you. But I mean the stories themselves, the Seven Club tales, says a solid majority of them have supernatural elements. So unless you're a believer in the occult, it's pretty hard to believe that those stories were factual.
The seven club tales are in the journal were stories that were kind of like told by seven different people, as you explained, in a 7 week period at different homes, and hence the Seven Story Club they were called. I think the first story started January 1st, 1669.
That's right. That was Mr. Jeffries' own story. It's called The Sea Serpent. Actually, probably quite a few of you know that, technically speaking, in England, the year didn't begin until March 25th, and that was the case up until 1752, I believe, when England finally adopted the Georgian rather than the old Julian calendar. But it was nevertheless still the case that many people nevertheless celebrated January 1st as New Year's Day. And so these seven men were sharers of books and other resources, and I guess they had more or less run out of their supply of books and were awaiting books on order for England. So instead, they decided to tell stories to each other on a weekly basis for 7 weeks. So that's the frame for the seven tales.
The sea serpent was a very interesting one. I have to say, it starts off with people being warned against encountering this creature, or they'll be killed. And the characters decide to listen to him, and so they go away and avoid the monster, which is something that's like almost the opposite of a story done today.
Yes, it's the first story. The Sea Serpent is rather short, but it certainly has some elements of mystery around it. The teller, Mr. Jeffrey, and his helpers were doing fishing and curing up in the Isles of Shoals. Those are islands off the New Hampshire, Maine coast, about 9 miles off the coast. And this gentleman, whom they came to call the strange visitor, he's a nautical looking guy with bushy eyebrows and stout, kind of bow legged, with a Austin seems to emphasize the fact that he wore an earring in his left ear only. I'm not quite sure what that signifies, but in any case, he mysteriously appears in the shed in which they're lodging, and warns them that they had better be off by before the end of the next day, or they'll be eaten by the sea serpent that lives under the island. And he tells of all the ravages of this sea serpent. Apparently, the sea serpent especially liked to dine on mermaids, and pretty merciless in devouring them. So in any case, well, they respond. They say, well, Mr. Jeffrey says to him, well, how do I know you're just not trying to scare us off from these rich fishing grounds before we've managed to do all of our loading? And at that point, he just disappears. He had appeared with the sound of oars, and he disappears, I think, the sound of oars, but they don't really see either his appearance or disappearance. So that's more or less the some of the first story. At one point in time, they comment on seeing a phosphorescent ring around the entire island. The serpent has his den under the island, and whether that signifies that the serpent itself was phosphorescent, I'm not quite sure. But you're very right that from the very start, the strange visitor is kind of strange, trying to figure out what are his motivations. And he appears in two more of the Seven Club tales, and his motivations remain strange in those tales as well. So that's the kickoff. The story of the sea serpent, and of course I don't think I said it, but Mr. Jeffrey and his helpers take the advice of the strange visitor. In fact, they leave the very next morning before they're even able to complete all their loading. I guess the crew let Mr. Jeffrey know in no uncertain terms that they didn't want to get eaten by this serpent. So off they went, and that's the end of the tale until the next appearance of the strange visitor.
And he's the only reoccurring character in those seven tale stories. Is that correct?
I think so. Yes. Although there are some characters who are not named as the strange visitor who are certainly impress one as similar. For instance, in the second batch of tales, Dr. Cranston's tale, the one called A Marvelous Cure at Newport, involved the gentleman who's cured seems to me at least to have many similarities to the strange visitor. But Austin does not specifically say that he was in fact it was in fact another appearance of the strange visitor.
Yeah, just something to speculate over, I guess. Something to chatter over the internet, I guess now.
I don't expect there's too much internet chatter on John Osborne Austin and his Seven Club tales, but maybe we'll manage to engender some. I hope so.
Anyway, my favorite is Goblin Land or the Devil's Healing. That's probably my favorite of all the stories.
Yes, that's the majority of the first seven tales are set in England. Of the first seven tales, five are set in England and only two in the America. And the Goblin Land is one of those two. I think what's involved there, the basic story is related. The narrator is on I guess I believe a fur trading mission, and decides to go upriver further, and there he meets an Indian who offers to guide him to Niagara Falls. At this point in time, we realize that these stories are set in the mid 17th century. Not many of the East Coast settlers had any opportunity to see Niagara Falls. So he goes there, and at some point in time, I'm not sure whether, you'll have to forgive me, I'm not sure whether it's he or someone he's telling the story of, falls ill. And the Indians tell him, well, they're far to the west. There are springs, hot springs, where you can get a cure. And the only risk is that they're claimed by a goblin who lives below ground but emerges to torture, terrorize, and eat visitors. So he goes, he goes with the Indians, and they manage to make it to Goblin Land, where in fact he does receive a prompt cure in the hot springs. So he narrates, his narration describes phenomena exactly similar to geysers. And I have to believe that Austin was basing this conception of the Goblin Land off the actual geysers out in Yellowstone Park. Austin was a very well-traveled man, both internationally and in the United States. He was a wool broker and dealer by profession, and so he did some travel just to in pursuit of his occupation, but he also did for leisure travel. And I have to believe that he himself visited Yellowstone, and that the Goblin Land reflects um, in part his experience there. And the happy ending of the story is that the party of the gentleman who is cured manages to escape from the dangerous land and return. And as opposed to many goblin or demon stories where everyone falls victim, why, this is one with a happy ending. The individual makes it back cured and not a victim of the goblin.
Yeah, he did escape the goblin, didn't he?
He sure did. Now it's a far better told story than my rendition. So don't judge it by my rendition. But
Yours was a clip.
all the stories are very well told. Austin does not pretend to make the language archaic, and I don't think it really is archaic. But he has a bit of convoluted style, so you have to have a little patience. If the reader who wants Ernest Hemingway, bam 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 type of storytelling is probably not going to like Austin. But if you have a little more tolerance for a more nuanced way of telling a story, Austin could still be your cup of tea.
And then another story he did was The Secret Meeting, or How a Good Baking May Come from a Cold Oven.
Yes, this is told by William Coddington, who was a very prominent citizen of the time. I think he was governor of the colony at least a few times. He was a Quaker. Rhode Island did not discriminate like the Massachusetts colonies in terms of religious belief, so that Quakers, Jews, other believers in other religions were able to settle and live peacefully in Rhode Island. And one of those was William Coddington. And he had been, while he still lived in England, his co-religionists had been subject to persecution, and they were, the government would send out posses, if you will, in search of people who were absent from the authorized Sunday worship. And the story, the Coddington story, The Secret Meeting, does not have any supernatural elements, but the essence of it is that the dissenters were having two meetings. One was kind of a sham meeting with a few people that might easily be discovered, and the other was the real meeting. So they were hoping to, if you will, decoy the posse off the real meeting by these sham meetings. And the people who got caught in the sham meetings, why, they would take their punishment. So in any case, the real meeting was being held in the disused oven of a baker who was a dissenter. And one of the posse on a Sabbath actually comes to the bakery. He's hungry and wants to buy some bread, but he hears something in the disused oven. The baker had two ovens, and but he eventually accepts the thesis that it's just rats. It's not a very attractive thesis to talk about a bakery, but he accepts it. And furthermore, when the authorities learn that he actually bought bread from this dissenting baker, he takes flack himself, so that for the future, why the posses very much avoid the bakery. So the dissenters are glad they can have their secret meeting with not much chance that it's going to be interrupted. So there's nothing supernatural there, but it reflects the state of religious tolerance or lack thereof in England at the time of, I guess this is more or less the time of King James I that he's talking about. And so it's a nice historical piece. It's nice that the level of supernaturality, if you will, among the Seven Club tales varies, and so there's a variety among the tales. It's not all demon and ghost stories. Some are more or less strictly in a historical type of framework, as is this tale of The Secret Meeting.
And then we go to the Witch of Hammersmith, or how an ill-advised journey gained not honor nor profit.
Yeah, this is told by Mr. Brenton, and uh, um, it's notable for me in terms of its portrayal of the witch, because it's almost the descriptions, which are very good. She lives in a very Hammersmith is actually a borough or whatever immediately adjoining London. You can almost all the settings of Austin are real places, and so if you're interested enough, you can look them all up. But she lives in a very spooky woods in that area, and this young ambitious young man who's the protagonist is contemplating, taking what shall I call it, a life's journey. He wants to make his fortune, and so he's going to be asking his father for some money to start out, etc. But before he makes a final decision, he wants to consult this witch to see what she will predict about his possible success. So he goes through this it's a really spooky setting in the woods. I think Austin does a good job of describing it, and she's really a malevolent nature. She expresses her curses or maledictions on multiple generations of his family, but she tells him if he wants to know what's going to happen, why go a bit from her house and find the big tree and walk around it 13 times. And if you hear the owl say, to it, then you got to dig on the one side of the tree and you'll find something that'll be helpful to you. Well, he does exactly that. He finds a ring, and it says, go forth and prosper. And so he does the go forth part of it, but the bottom line is he doesn't prosper. And so by the time he's ready to return to home sweet home to see his father, well, he learns his father has died the month before. So it's one of my favorites of the tales. And it's a very I think, a very good portrayal of the witch. She has a headless sister who was also going to be available to weave some hosiery for the young man if he wanted it, but he decided he didn't want any part of that. And she's got a familiar, a cat perhaps, that appears as a phosphorescent green shining in her hut. So it's worth reading just for the description. Even if you don't want to take the moral of the story, it's worth reading just for the description of the witch and her scary setting.
I know the narrator at the end of the story, pulls out a ring and proves it, that it happened.
Yes, that the fact that there is a physical relic of the tale is something that is in common with many of Austin's tales, and in this case, it's the ring. And the gentleman has inherited this ring and is able to show it to the other members of the club to get their opinion.
And then there's the ghostly revel, or the nun's gift, or the fair nun's gift.
Yes, this is Mr. Brinley's tale, and it's one of my very favorites because it's very much, structured as one might expect a modern supernatural story to go. A young man is delayed on business a ways from his own home and has to return at night. Long about midnight, of course, all spooky stuff has to happen long about midnight. And anyhow, he is passing a ruins of a castle and nunnery, and what does he encounter? But there seems to be a light in a door, and there's a gentleman dressed as an antique knight who invites him in to join a celebration. And it turns out there's a dozen nuns and a dozen less one knights there who are dancing and having a rather merry old time. So the young man makes the 12th night, if you will, and he finds that he has a very lovely companion. She manages to tell him a few things about herself. When she lost her father, she vowed she would have no man, and therefore, for that reason, she entered the nunnery, which is rather in days of yore, many young women entered nunneries, whether of their own choice or not by their own choice, of reasons far different than wanting to be a bride of Christ, if you will. So it's kind of interesting. The dances begin in a rather solemn, formal manner, but with the help of wine, why they end up being very merry by the time the narrator is called away to the door, and no more is he out the door, then it closes with a noise, and he can see no more light, no more nunnery. And when he comes back the next day, there is nothing to be seen. Before he departed, the nun had given him a ring. It's another ring, and this ring said "None so fair." And so this is another, again, a relic that has been handed down in the family. This ring that was given by the nun. So it's to me, this of all the 14 stories, this story to me has the most structural characteristics of a modern weird tale. Maybe it would be one of the easier reading experiences of the tales, and it is like the sea serpent tale. It is relatively brief. So that's the story of the ghostly rebel.
And then we have the wrecked galleon, or the second coming of the strange visitor. Our friend comes back.
He sure does, and he had been up on business in the Isles of Shoals. You see, the Isles of Shoals seem to be one of his principal hangouts, that and the Caribbees. And in any case, he was on the way back from there, but he was taken by a very richly laden Spanish galleon. And most of the crew of his ship were just put off in boats to shift for themselves. But for whatever reason, maybe for his knowledge of the local waters, he was kept on the galleon. And the galleon is driven onto a rocky island. In the process of they do manage to get into a cove, but then there's a big upheaval of the waters, and every one of the crew perishes except, of course, the strange visitor himself. And he sees there's a lofty rock, but he sees a way up through a defile, and he makes his way up through a series of pools, and he discovers there's a fairy there and a pink grotto. She wears a diamond in her hair, and she offers him entertainment, and offers to give him the mechanism to leave the island if he wishes. And that mechanism is going to be a kind of a magical boat that's formed out of a giant turtle shell. So despite his attraction to the fairy, he remarks that her limbs are warm rather than cold, as fairies are often supposed to be. But he makes his way in the turtle boat down through the series of pools, and then is finally picked up by a Dutch ship, taken to the Netherlands. There he falls in with a very attractive Dutch widow who offers to keep for him both the turtle boat and a chart showing where the treasure can be found. The Spanish ship was demasted and more or less wrecked, but the body was intact, so that all the bullion and other jewels are still there. But So when he finally when he tells his tale to the narrator of the story, the narrator doesn't want any part of the turtle boat, but he'll have the chart, and on the chart he sees in one of the corner a crest that looks to him like a mark of the devil. So, as with many of the strange visitor uh, uh, stories, a lot of the motivations are not as clear as one might wish. Just whether the strange visitor stuck with the Dutch widow or not is not fully told, but at least the map was real, and we don't really know whether anyone ever tried to go back to follow the map to recover the treasure. So that's the second outing of the strange visitor. It's rather a more disconnected tale than the first one. It has some fairy tale type elements like the turtle shell boat and the seven pools and the pink grotto where he encounters the fairy. But overall, I think it's a little more. I didn't find it as effective as the first Tale of the Sea Serpent. So with that, we've got one more adventure of the strange visitor still remaining.
Would you regard the strange visitor as being like a mischievous character, or is he like sent up a guardian angel? What would you call
It's
him?
really hard to say. The final tale that concerns him, Mr. Balston's tale, you could well conclude he's basically mischievous. But in the first tale, you're really left with a question. Well, is he really trying to save these men from being devoured by the sea serpent, or is he trying to scare them away? And it's not really clear. And for me, I find the tale of the wrecked galleon a little confused. It's hard for me to decipher much motivation for the strange visitor there, except he seems to have a way with women. He says he's been told that he seems to get along. The fairy on the island certainly wanted to keep him, and the Dutch widow wanted to keep him. So whether he ended up with that Dutch widow or not, I don't know. But you make a very good point. His motivations are very mixed. He's not a definite good guy or definite bad guy. Maybe he'd make a good comic series character today, because sometimes people like ones who are not wholly good or wholly bad, mixed.
He does kind of an anti-hero quality about him.
Yes.
Uh, the next story is White Herring of Bedfordshire, or How a White Feather May Not Show a Coward.
Yes, this is another one that I think has some fairy tale elements in it. The father-in-law of the narrator had been the royal falconer in England in service to the king, and as a young man, he had a young woman he was pursuing, and he promised her a feather from the plumage of a white heron that he had been following in his hunting expeditions. And so he pursues the heron through many adventures, but eventually, even though he falls off the cliff in the doing of it, he manages to grasp a tail feather of the heron, and he brings it to his beloved, and she really wants to fashion a pen from it to inscribe a message for her in a locket. And however, she finds that she pricks herself when she's fashioning the feather pen, and she writes her message in blood, but her blood won't staunch until, in fact, the heron flies by, and the feather just flies out the window, and the heron recovers it. So, with that, basically everyone lives happily ever after. So it's kind of quaint story. As I said, to me, it has some of the appeal of a fairy tale.
I guess like the seven stories also had a bonus story with it. I guess you'd call like an eighth story, Jeffrey's Dream of True Values.
Yes, that's added at the very end of the book. According to the narration, it was Mr. Jeffrey's wife insisted that he write it down, and it's basically a moralistic tale. It tells the tale of a weigher of lives who is going to rate lives either according to a brass, silver, or gold uh, designation. And the moral is that it's not the perceived dignity of the profession, but the earnestness with which the individual had pursued it that is the real merit in a life. So, a high churchman might end up not as well rated as just a simple yeoman farmer, for instance. So, it's almost a straight moralistic tale. I wouldn't call it bad, but that's the moral.
I'm surprised the stories are not better known.
Excuse me. I really can't speak to how well received the Seven Club Tales were. I don't know how many copies Jeffrey was not Jeffrey, Austin was printing. He did have from the late 1880s onward, he kept a store in downtown Providence selling his wares. If I had to guess, I would guess maybe he had 500 copies printed of William Jeffrey, Gentleman. Maybe if he sold out, maybe he even had to reprint. But he must have had a decent sale, or I don't think he would have paid to print the second series of Seven Tales, which he did the next year. So I really have not found much echo or mention of the Seven Club Tales. I must admit I haven't done an extremely exhaustive search for reviews or the like, but I would certainly agree that they ought to be better known because they are told with some skill, and they do have some, as I said, a solid majority of them have supernatural elements. They're very strongly grounded in English and colonial history. So I don't think they merit being totally forgotten. I hope that they'll have some more readers as the years progress.
Now, as we mentioned before, that we don't know whether Lovecraft read the Journal of William Jeffrey, but it does seem like something he would have read.
I think there's a good chance the fact that he inherited that specific book from Dr. Clark. Dr. Clark had a presentation copy of the book that Austin had presented to him. I guess it was offered in a 1985 book auction, and I guess there's some damp staining or whatever, so it really didn't make the auctioneer. The auctioneer, I think, had estimated it at something like $80 to $100, but it sold for only $37.50. And I think that maybe that was as a result of the condition, because many collectors, if they're going to spend a significant amount for an item, want the item to be in pristine conditions. For myself, if it's something I'm really interested in, I'll pay for it, even if it's in pretty bad condition. I'd love to pay $37.50 for a copy of, an inscribed copy or a letter copy with a presentation letter from Austin of the Diary of William Jeffrey, even if it does have some damp staining. But they were probably fairly small editions to begin with, so perhaps that's part of the reason that they have not, been read as promiscuously as one might hope. Probably not all that many libraries have copies. You can check WorldCat and see, for each of the titles and see how many libraries have it. But I keep hoping there'll be some more readers because I think there is merit in the stories.
Now, does Lovecraft's copy of that book still exist?
Well, Lovecraft, yes, because I mean he inherited it from Dr. Clark, and it was one of the three. One of he had three of the fiction books of Austin's in his library: Jeffrey, More Seven Club Tales, and Philip and Philippa. And of them, one of them was offered in this California book auction galleries in 1985. So that was surely Lovecraft's copy, and it was sold, I presume, to a private bidder, and I have no idea where it is now.
Mhm.
But I certainly think it's worth more than $37.50. But who am I to say? Whether it will ever appear in another book catalog, book dealer catalog, or auction catalog, I have no idea. But his copy did survive at least until 1985.
I guess there may be some hints that Lovecraft may have read it because he had an idea for a novel called The Club of Seven Dreamers.
Yes, S.G. Joshi pointed that out, and I don't know that there's even a bare plot summary for this Club of the Seven Dreamers. He never wrote much of it. In any case, I don't think anything survives. But the similarity in title is certainly suggestive that Austin's work could have played a role. Seven is a number with, I guess, some significance in occult type circles. So, but yes, that's another, if you will, clue that Lovecraft may in fact have read the book.
And then, as we mentioned, it may have been successful enough where, Austin decided to do the more Seven Clubs Tales.
Yes, I can't imagine he would have paid to print the More Seven Club Tales if he had not had a favorable reception to the Seven Club Tales in the first book. What people thought of the remainder of the first book is another matter. I personally consider the remainder of the first book to be very interesting as well. But the fact that he did print a sequel book in the very next year tells me that he probably did pretty well with the the journal of William Jeffrey. Maybe it sold out 500. He had to print some more. I don't know.
And then we
As
have,
far as I know, there are no personal or business papers of Austin surviving, at least none that have reached any kind of an archive. So things about his business dealings we are really pretty much unaware of, except that we know that he did keep an office in downtown Providence from the late 1880s, probably through the rest of his life.
and so I guess one of the first stories from that new batch was the Indian legend of Block Island.
Yes, this is a retelling of a very traditional story called the Palatine Light. The setting is Block Island, 1738, and a ship carrying men from the Palatinate in Western Germany is wrecked on Block Island, and most, if not all, the crew is rescued. And in being wrecked, they actually were driven into a cove or port, but then the violence of the storm sealed the cove off, so they had no way of leaving. So eventually they reconciled themselves. Well, we're probably going to be here, and most of the crewmen took. There were Indian natives living on Block Island at that time, and most of the crewmen took Indian wives. But their leader resisted doing that, despite the fact that the sachem or chief's daughter had a strong affection for him. And then comes a plague, and all the men die except for the leader, and it's the Sachem's daughter that nurses him back to health. So he finally bites the bullet and decides to marry her. They have a daughter but lose her, and then the Indian wife dies as well. And to one of the Indians, he leaves his ring with his heraldic, his arms stamped on the ring. And he asks that Indian to pass it along from generation to generation until an Englishman comes to the island to whom he can entrust it. And the implication is that this story, as concocted by Austin, actually occurred centuries before even Columbus. So this has some bearing on the fact that I think Austin was kind of interested in pre-Columbian, exploration of the Americas. So in any case, that Mr. Ray turns out to be who arrives in the year 1661, turns out to be the first English settler, and the Indians dutifully turn over the ring to him, but no one is able to decipher the arms or identify what family they might belong to. Now, I don't imagine there are any real heralds there, but whether the College of Heralds in England could have identified the individual or not is left unsaid. But it's a well-told story, and it has I think a very happy ending. So it's just as you were pleased by the Goblin Land, I especially like this Indian legend of Block Island. And as I said, it's an adaptation of the legend of the Palatine Light. There were some darker sides. Some people allege that some of the English settlers on Block Island became wreckers. These are people who laid false beacons to lure ships to wreck on the shore and then to pillage the ships. But nothing like that is brought into this story. So one of my favorites.
And then the second one be the Nameless Guest of Narragansett. Say that?
I think that's correct. Yes. This is Mr. Smith, John Smith's tale. He inherited from his father a trading post at Wickford down in the South Country. And the essence of this story is that a man comes ashore in a boat and asked to spend 3 months with the good folks of the trading post. And he says he'll be a account keeper for them during that period to earn his keep. He also offers to be a tutor of Latin, Greek, or Hebrew if anybody wants to learn them. But apparently there are too few young folks there to take him up. Either that, or maybe if they wanted to study one of those three, they were too busy with their chores on their farms, to spend the time studying Latin, Greek, or Hebrew. In any case, he proves to be very shy of royal authorities when they come nearby, and disappears into the woods. Finally, they almost get him, but he leaps out a window and says, "I'm headed to New London." So he's trying to decoy them off to New London. And in fact, when the end of the 3 months arrive, his original boat comes back to carry him off. And the legend goes that he admits while he's still there, even though he doesn't want to give his name to his hosts, he admits that he was a supporter of Oliver Cromwell during his period of rule in England. And I guess Austin adds a note that indicates there was a belief that he might actually have been one of the judges who condemned King Charles I to death in 1649. So just what his exact role was in the Cromwell state is left unsaid, but that's the story.
Then our next one is A Strange Landing at Kennebec, the Spirit of Evil.
Yes, Kennebec is a river up in Maine, and the teller, Mr. Willett, is again, like Mr. Coddington, a rather prominent citizen. In fact, he was the first English mayor of the city of New York after the Dutch surrendered their rule. But this comes a little, I guess, I believe probably a little later in his career. He had made his fortune, but decided to make one last trading venture in search of beaver pelts. He was going to trade for them up in Maine. And so he goes, but he finds there are no decent pelts available. There's nothing to be had. The only ones are not. He's like those collectors who only buy fine condition items. He only wanted fine condition, pelts. And so he find an old Indian he knows finally comes to his boat and hems and haws, but eventually says, "Well, I can send you to a place where you can get unexceeded pelts, but you're going to have to sell your soul to the devil to get them." And I guess Mr. Willett figures, well, we're talking about a heathen devil. I don't believe in him, so be it. So he follows the Indians' directions to pick up these pelts, and just as the Indian had said, why there is a huge mound of beautiful pelts, and every day he and his crew load them, and by the very next morning there's another pile. So they load across a full week of 7 days, including the Sabbath. So he makes his crew work on the Sabbath. He even promises them, a percentage of the an additional percentage of the goods in return for doing that. Well, this tale is a moralistic tale, so it has a sad ending. They don't leave port for very long, but a vast storm arises, and all the ship, all the pelts, and all the men except Mr. Willett are lost. He manages to be rescued and returns with his moral that work hard, don't accept a bargain that looks better than it ought to be. So that's the moral element of the tale.
So how you sell yourself to the devil? You always get that trouble.
Don't sell yourself to the devil. Whether his soul actually went down to the devil at when he died, that's left unsaid by the narrator. I guess well, it's Mr. Willett is the narrator, so we'll have to wait for eternity to find out the answer to that one.
And then there's the three ghostly appearings at study hall. This is not the study hall we think of like in school.
This is not what you remember from high school. This is the home of William Blackston, who was an early English settler in the New World, came as early, I guess, as 1623. In fact, I believe he is generally credited to have been the first white man to live in the area that became the city of Boston. He later built himself what you might call a hermitage up in the wilderness in what was then at the very bound of the Plymouth colony. I think it's now the site of his home, the so-called Study Hill, is now within the modern bounds of the state of Rhode Island. It's in a community called Lonsdale. It was close by where the Ann and Hope Mill was eventually built. But anyhow, to return to the story itself, he tells three ghost stories. Two are really of mysterious fires that he cites that appear to originate in bodies of water. And he has all kinds of hardships getting there and getting back. I had an Indian guide. On his way, on one of the trips, he passes by what he calls Cobbling Rock. And in more modern times, this was known as Cobble Rock, a huge boulder perched on a flattish rock platform. It has since been knocked over, apparently in a storm in the late 20th century. So his first two tales are of mysterious water-related fires. The second ghost tale, the third tale, relates to his old tutor at Cambridge University, where he had attended Dr. Caius, John Caius. And Caius compliments him on his if you will, retreat in the country with his books and nature. He was very well known for his work as a horticulturalist. He loved to develop fine strains of apple and give grafts to visitors to plant. The one thing that I did find out is that Dr. Caius lived from 1510 to 1573, and William Blackstone wasn't born until 1595. So Austin was taking a little bit of what do you call it, author's liberty here, and directly associating Blackstone with Dr. Caius. But it's very nice. He has some recollections. Caius had built 3 gates for the undergraduates at Cambridge. The first was the gate of humility when they entered school. The second was the gate of virtue when they were amidst their labors, and then finally the gate of honor when they were graduated. And all 3 of these gates still survive. You can, without much effort at all, you can look them up on the internet and see them. In fact, they've in recent years they've been restoring the gate of virtue. But it's I like this story especially because of the references to Blackstone, who's a favorite of mine, and the historic ties. Others might consider this a rather slight narration. I'm not sure.
I don't guess
But
you'd ever heard any accounts of any descendants being angry about their portrayal of their ancestor in some of these books or stories.
No, as I commented, I really don't have any much knowledge at all about the reaction to these stories. Most of my own personal research skills are in the family history line, and so it might be that someone with research, with better research skills in the humanities and literature would do better than I in finding out more about the reaction to the Seven Club stories. What were what reviews can you find in the press, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm certainly not saying that my little Lovecraft annual paper was the be all and end all of research on John Osborne Austin. I think there's definitely more work to be done by some future worker.
And then we have the 5th story, Dr. Cranston's Tale, A Marvelous Cure at Newport. And I do have to say it's a very interesting cure for somebody.
Yes, and this is the one where I think the recipient of the cure, to me, very much suggests the strange visitor, but Austin does not identify. Neither Austin nor his narrator, Dr. Cranston, identify the recipient of the cure as the strange visitor. In any case, he's broken his leg. He's got a pretty bad break of the lower leg, and I guess it's so bad that it requires an amputation. So even though it's the first one he's done without supervision, Dr. Cranston does it for him. And he asks that the severed lower member, his lower leg, he wants to take that with the patient wants to take that with him as well. And he promises the doctor, he says, well, I'm going to give you my snuff box, which is another link to the strange visitor, because the strange visitor is always puffing up huge clouds of tobacco, not necessarily, most cases, smoking it rather than sniffing it. But in any case, the cured individual offer. He says, I'm going to come back in a year's time, and I'm either going to pay you twice your normal fee, or if I've managed to reattach my leg and grow it back, your services are free except for the snuff box. And he does come back, very mysterious. So you hear rowing, but you don't hear his boat making shore. And on midnight, all these spooky things have to happen. Around midnight, he knocks again on Dr. Cranston's door, and the doctor, who'd rather be resting, but of course this time he's expecting the visitor. And by golly, the leg seems to be attached. There's a little band there, but the leg seems reattached. So he has to make do with just the snuff box is all the patient leaves him. And there are all kinds of theories. Some people postulate that the original patient sent back a twin brother to fool the doctor. Others say the doctor was just trying to use the story to drum up business. So again, as is not uncommon with Austin stories, there's a bit of doubt left at the end. But anyhow, it's an interesting story. And as I said, my own feeling was that this patient seemed an awful lot like the strange visitor. He certainly evidenced a bit of mischief, but can't say for sure because neither Cranston nor the author, Mr. Austin, identified the patient as the strange visitor.
It made me think of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, of almost like an interesting take on it.
I see.
I
have to admit, I don't know that story, but
the
that's
one
just
about the King Arthur story, Arthurian story about like the knight asked someone to cut off his head, and and if you cut off my head, I'll come back again a year later and cut off yours.
I didn't click on that, but that's a very interesting observation. Austin, as far as I know, did not attend school beyond the high school level. In fact, he went to his father ran a private school in Providence, and that's where he went for most of his upper education. But he was not a college graduate, but maybe he knew it from his high school studies or his later reading. He was certainly a very literate man, almost unexcelled in terms of Rhode Island families early on. But someone ought to develop that comparison. It sounds very interesting to me.
They sound a little bit similar in themes. And,
yes.
And then the sixth story, the first caller to mine in at Portsmouth.
Yes, this is Portsmouth, which is also like Newport. It's on the island of Aquidneck. And excuse me, this is the story of Mr. Ballston, and it's the third and final appearance of the strange visitor. It's the Mr. Ballston is just getting his inn ready to open. In fact, he even gives the date, May 20th of 1638 was the day of the opening of his inn. And he's contemplating after all his labors, he's contemplating what he's going to do for the first guest. And who's the first guest but the strange visitor? And of course, right away, he's got to borrow some tobacco and puff up a big pipe of it. But in any case, he eventually he brings out a bag that he shakes, and apparently it's full of gold. And he says, "Well, listen up. In return for your kind reception, I'm going to stand the bill for all your guests on your first night of business here." And he purports to be very tired, so Boston has taken upstairs by the boy and goes to bed without ever checking, well, how much money does he really have with him? And so the guests appear, and when they learn that the food and the drink is all free on this first night, courtesy of the strange visitor, why they have a go at it. They stay till early morning of the next day. But when the visitor doesn't appear in a timely fashion, why the boy goes up and can't rouse him. So the innkeeper goes up the stairs and opens the door, and there's no one there. And all he finds is a receipt, which a very, what should we say, kind of snarky receipt, that says, see you later, alligator. Essentially, those aren't the words, but it's a snarky receipt. And in the corner is that same seal or dark mark that they thought was the devil had left on the chart in the wrecked galleon story. And so, of course, the innkeeper, Mr. Boston, is very distraught to begin with. But for the long run, he takes the long view that so many folks were interested in his story and visited his inn just to hear the story told again, that maybe he ended up better off as a result of being fleeced by the strange visitor. So maybe that's kind of a quasi positive ending to the trickery of the strange visitor. But that's the end of the strange visitor as far as Austin tells his story.
I have a theory just popped in my head going back to the first, like, sea serpent story. That the reason why the strange visitor was scaring those people away because he didn't want them to see his new, like, boat, being pulled by a sea serpent.
Yes, yes, that whole conceit of the boat being pulled by the sea serpent is runs through uh, a good, at least two of the stories. And I think it's in the final story. I believe the story of Mr. Balsam that in making his journey from his base in the Isles of Shoals down to Aquidneck, Newport, he's taking, he has the sea serpent at his beck and call because of his possession of this scale that he uses as a magical boat. And the sea serpent is especially angry because he's taking one of the local mermaids from the Isles of Shoals and giving her safe passage down to Aquidneck. In fact, before he ends his journey in city of Newport, he actually takes her to Cormorant Rock, where he believes that she'll be safer than she was up in the Isles of Shoals. So mermaids are another recurring feature of his stories. I guess he was fascinated, excuse me, both by sea serpents and by mermaids.
He seemed quite fascinated by the sea. He's like,
Yes, and he did. I mean, he was not a mariner, as I said. He was a wool broker, but he did take several international trips, and so he was a well-traveled man. So I would think it's quite. The Isles of Shoals just keep recurring. They're the home. They're the home base of the strange visitor. So I have to believe that Austin visited there. They became kind of like a tourist destination in the late 19th century. Celia Thatcher, the poetess, and her family had a hotel on Appledore Island in the Isles of Shoals. So maybe Austin and his family were guests there. Maybe if a guest book is still preserved somewhere, maybe their names are in it. But doubtless, I mean, he definitely knew he was, to my knowledge, never a crew member, but I think he definitely knew what it was like to be on an ocean voyage.
I wonder if he may have based it on somebody, the sailor he saw there, and using his
Very possibly.
All right, and the seventh story was My Husband and Other Trails, which was based on was actually told by a woman.
That's right. This is the sole appearance of a female narrator in the Seven Club Tales. It's the lady's name was originally Herodias Long. She was born in the English countryside, but came to the city of London after her father died when she was 10. And by age 14 or 16, I've forgotten which, she married the apprentice John Hicks, and they came to the New World, where they eventually ended up, I believe, in Newport. And however, she was deserted by her husband, Mr. Hicks. He took most of her money and their son, and deserted her for the Netherlands. So after a period of time, she married Mr. George Gardner, and she stayed with him a good long period, maybe I don't know, maybe as much as 20 years. She became an adherent of the Quaker sect. Of course, she was not going to be persecuted in Rhode Island for that, but she, whether fortunate or not, she had the calling to go and testify to her faith up in Massachusetts, where, of course, the Quakers were persecuted. And for that, she was stripped to her waist and received 10 lashes, but healed and made it back to Rhode Island. This was the same persecution that resulted in the hanging of Mary Dyer. She kept returning as well, but she kept on and kept on and kept on to the point that the Massachusetts authorities just eventually decided we've had enough and decided to execute her. But in any case, Mistress Porter, that was her final married name, eventually separated from Mr. Gardner. She decided that she was going to leave him rather than being left by her husband as she was by her first husband. And then her final husband was Mr. Porter, from whom she is apparently also separated now by the time of the telling of the tales. And so she's very generous. All three of her former husbands are still living, and she makes no judgment on them. And so her final feeling is that, judgment awaits us in eternity, and for here and now, it's just for all of us to do our best. So again, he ends up with a bit of moralizing to the story. There's no supernatural element to this story, so it's mostly an historical piece, mostly also perhaps to some extent a moralizing piece. But it's nice to have a woman's voice, and so the 14 narrators, only 13 are male, one is a woman.
I had noticed that it almost seems like there's almost like a religious view on it about like, Christians being persecuted by other Christians,
Yes, 5 generations of his family before him were Quakers. So he has a long line of Quaker ancestry in his patrilineal line. In fact, his parents and his 3 sisters and 1 brother are all buried in the Quaker section of the North Burial Ground. But Austin apparently himself and his children, he apparently left the Quaker faith in the 1905 census. He called himself a Unitarian, and he and his wife and his 2 children are buried in Swan Point Cemetery, not in a Quaker burial place. As far as I know, his direct line is extinct. Neither of his children had children of their own.
Okay. So I guess going back to Lovecraft, if he had read these, do you feel they had an influence on his stories?
I think he might have been a little disappointed that despite the fact that Austin's own home was Providence, none of the stories had a Providence setting. You would think in 14 stories set in 17th century Rhode Island, at least a couple of them might have ended up in Providence, but that's not the case. Perhaps Austin had more familiarity from a genealogical point of view with the southern part of Rhode Island. Also, I mean, Newport was by far more populous, the greater city, than Providence for a long time. I don't know. It was probably the 19th century before Providence exceeded Newport in population. So maybe there was, Lovecraft was certainly also himself very interested in local history. You only need to read the story like The Shunned House, which goes into a long narration about the succession of owners and residents of the Shunned House on Benefit Street, to know that Lovecraft also had an interest of his own in family history and local history. He was by no means as industrious or energetic a family historian as was Austin, but nevertheless, he was interested in the local history and also interested, of course, in supernatural. And a good number of the stories have supernatural elements. So I think the historical connection, the supernatural connection, and the fact that Austin really didn't develop much about providence in his stories may have given Lovecraft some possible motivation for writing stories like The Shunned House and The Haunter of the Dark and the case of Charles Dexter Ward, to name a few.
And of course, Call of Cthulhu,
and the Call of Cthulhu. That's right.
Yeah, I guess I'm thrown in there. When you wrote the article on Austin, you had remarked that Lovecraft did not exploit his wide historical knowledge of this early fiction. Is probably explained by the fact he regarded Massachusetts Puritan theocracy as the darkest element in New England history.
Well, I think that's a good, probably it's a better explanation of why it took him a while to start writing stories that were set in Rhode Island, because he wanted to write dark and scary stories about, oppression and the witch cult in colonial New England, and Massachusetts was the epicenter there. I mean, Rhode Island was in fact a place of refuge for persecuted Christians and other faiths. So I think yes, that many of the early stories, the whole Arkham cycle, is probably set in Massachusetts because for him that was the epicenter of the darkness of the persecution and the witchcraft, if there was witchcraft in the colonial days.
So should we only care about John Austen because of the influence he may have had on Lovecraft? Are there other reasons modern readers should care about him?
I hesitate to make a judgment. Have been a big proponent of the works of Edith Minator, which only lightly touch on the supernatural, also grounded in New England. But when Hippocampus Press published 2 collections that Sean Donnelly and I assembled of her work, the publisher had complaints. This stuff isn't weird at all. What do we want weird. And so what can I say about Austen's 7 Club tales? You will find that, a majority of these tales do have supernatural elements, but modern readers who are used to telegraph type style may not find the narration very easy to deal with. Where a moralizing ending occurs, they may not care that much for it. So I think Austen is very much a matter of taste. I first knew his work because of my own work as a hobbyist, as a genealogist. I can say he was a very thorough genealogist. His Genealogical Dictionary of Rhode Island, which he originally published in 1887, is a huge work. I mean, it's a massive, oversized tome. But I have to say, I don't think Austen is for everybody. Possibly some modern readers, though. If you can cope with a somewhat, I don't know, I don't want to call it elaborate, but a somewhat, I'm struggling for a word here about his style. It's not the telegraph style. He has a more, it's like Lovecraft. It's to some degree like Lovecraft. He has a more developed type of style. So I think a reader of Lovecraft, to some extent, has some toleration for a more developed type of style. So, why not try a story or two? You can find them all in electronic form on the internet. We've both given opinions about the best of them. Maybe they're worth a look, and if they're all short, the stories are all short. If a exploring reader doesn't care for them, well, so be it. At least he's given them a try. But I'm hoping that there will in the future be some readers who will really click on John Austen, just like I did for him and for Edith Minator, and decide to take it a few more steps, because there's certainly still more work to do. The whole question of the reception of Austin's work from a literary point of view is basically, I think, still remains to be explored. So I say, by all means, give a few of the Seven Club tales a try. But if you don't like it, don't tell me I didn't tell you you might not like them. That's my advice.
Come with
Just like
disclaimer
just
on
like
there.
just like Austin's stories, well, half of this, half of the other. I'm not telling you you're going to love it because you may
Yeah.
not love it.
Yeah. Is that the trigger warning? You may not love it. No.
That's right.
Yeah.
You may say this is the worst bad advice Faig ever gave me, and so be it. It wouldn't be the only bad advice I ever gave. But I think there's a wealth of knowledge of history and New England families and New England superstition buried in these Seven Club tales that some readers may enjoy, and that I hope Lovecraft did, if, as I suspect, he did read these tales.
As I was going through these stories and all that, there was one word that kind of like stood out for me, and it was cogset. I guess is how you pronounce that. And it's a type of fish, also called a cunner or a blue perch. It's a species native to Northwest Atlantic. And so that's the word for our episode is cogset.
Yes, in the surrounding framework, the surrounding journal framework for the Seven Club tales, why I think one of the expeditions they take is a one where, well, in any case, they pick some wild berries and also in this and the wife makes a delicious pudding from them, but also she particularly likes the chowders made from this fish. I don't know how to pronounce it either. So although they are bony, apparently they make a very good sweet chowder. Rhode Islanders love their chowder, so there's that aspect as well. He also, I guess, one of the explorations he takes was after a storm, and he finds some what he calls giant ocean clams deposited on the beach, and I guess these are too tough for eating, chopped up, but they make an excellent broth that he says his wife especially likes. So he brings her back some of them. So these are kind of the some of the what should we say, homely things, fish species, types of rock, types of trees. There are several. The family takes several expeditions in search of these kind of things in the framing journal. So there's some good stuff there, and probably some good eating fish too, if you can put up with boniness or whatever the defects are.
You have any questions you want to add or remarks? All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming with us again, Mr. Faig. It's always enjoyment having you here.
Well, Mark and companions, thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege to talk about a favorite subject like John Osborne Austin. So thank you.
The stars are no longer right. We must cease all discussions till they align again next month. 30+ minutes of H.P. Lovecraft is sponsored by Goblin Land Tours. Try our hot springs. The podcast is created in association with LovecraftPod.com and Logan Speculative Fiction Group, with the help of the Logan County Public Library and the Great Old Ones. Special thanks to Katie Tysons for warning us of the sea serpent, and Josh for the Limbo Muppet. Until we meet again next month, may you avoid Princess Cthulhu and her 666 Club.
Thank you very much, and have a good evening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.